Welcome to the Pickle Barrel Fantasy Football Podcast. July 27th, 2016, Season 2, Episode 8. I'm Andy.
I'm Frank.
Well, Trump has asked Russia to hack into Clinton's emails, and the bromance between old Trump and Putin continues. Coach K tells Team USA they need to cool it after they went full-on Harlem Globetrotters on the Chinese team, including some 360-degree dunks and half-court three-pointers.
Really?
Yeah. and a Savannah, Georgia mom beat her 16-year-old on Facebook live feed because she was, quote, being a thought.
Bizarre.
Yeah, it's a weird and strange, wonderful world we live in. But some interesting fantasy news today. Jamal Charles put on the PUP list.
Yeah.
Not that big of a surprise, I guess. I mean, I think that might just be caution.
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't read too much into it, but yeah, I did see that today. But he is old.
He is old.
This is why he's dropped quite a bit from what we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, and then the other big news, old Fitzmagic, old beautiful beard, signs back up with the Jets.
Re-signed, yeah.
And that's a big relief for, I think, a lot of maybe people that are either keeping Eric Decker or keeping Brandon Marshall or whoever. Probably sign a big sigh of relief knowing that he's coming back. So what does that do to Brandon Marshall's value? Where did he stand and where is he now?
I mean, I think it definitely helps him, but man, I'm just still not really too hot on it. We went through them. The O-line's bad. I think it's
years old.
They've got a fucking horrific schedule. I mean, I think they're gonna have a really hard season.
Yeah,
they lost Chris Ivory.
I mean, I think really the only two guys you're really looking at on that team, well, three guys, is Matt Forte, Eric Decker, and Brandon Marshall, and they're all, I would expect regression from every single one of those guys compared to last year's stats.
Oh, yeah. I would say it's damn near impossible it wouldn't happen. But, I don't know. Could be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times before.
Indeed. All right, now we're doing the always popular NFC East.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the most popular division in football.
There's a good chance.
Count up fans. I mean, Cowboys are huge. Giants are the team of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Redskins have a huge following in Washington. And you wrap it up with those old, dirty Philadelphia Eagles. Who
fucking Philly fans.
Oh, my God. Okay, we went to the Philadelphia game last December, and it was a different experience. We experienced a full-on, full-out fucking parking lot brawl. Not a Redskins fan to be found. Just a bunch of fucking Philly fans just fucking brawling out between each other over some drunk-ass slut and too much alcohol in the fucking...
I think they literally have a courtroom in the basement of the Link because they fucking have to deal with this so much.
It's actually a courtroom that's in the complex because they got the Philly Stadium, the arena, the basketball/hockey arena, and the football stadium all in this industrial area. So there's plenty of business there for that court.
Jesus. God.
But anyway, let's move right into it. So, Frank, you're going to break down the Eagles for us.
I sure am. Yeah, start off with their draft. The most notable thing of their draft, you may remember, they traded up to the second spot so that they could secure quarterback Carson Wentz.
Yes, indeed, Wentz.
Yeah, that's obviously something they're trying to build the team in the future. Looks like he could be good, but we've all seen first-round quarterbacks fail, so who knows?
I mean, more likely he fails than he does well. But.
I'd say yeah. In terms of probability, most likely. But because of that, they lost a shitload of picks throughout their draft. They didn't get another pick till the third round. They got a center. In the fifth round, they had 2 picks. They got a running back and another offensive tackle. So they definitely worked on their O-line in this offseason. And then they were able to get some defensive players in the last of their 4 picks. But all that was in the 6th and 7th round. So guys that, hopefully in a few years could be something, but we'll see. But they worked on their O-line with what they could and their quarterback. Notable offseason happenings. Obviously, I think most of you all know that Chip Kelly was fired.
That's probably the big one.
Yeah.
What does that do to their offense? I guess nobody knows right now.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. Doug Peterson has come in as the head coach. He was offensive coordinator under Chip, so we'll see. I mean, I think it's still going to be relatively the same, maybe a little bit less crazy in kind of the style that Chip Kelly played, less up tempo. But
right.
But I could be wrong. But it's kind of bizarre. I mean, the Eagles had Chip Kelly for, 2 or 3 years, and they've already fired him after they basically let him become the GM. That, they let him
it was very strange. I mean, they pretty much just said, all right, your system didn't work for us the way we thought it would. But, yeah, he was bringing in players. I don't know, though. His personnel moves, it was like, getting rid of LaShawn McCoy, bringing in Marco Murray, I think that was super questionable. And,
I mean, definitely. Hindsight for sure.
I mean, you would expect, Shady McCoy to fit that Chip Kelly offense just like a glove with his pass-catching ability and his ability to go run to the outside. But
I'm pretty sure in 2013 they went 13-3 with Chip Kelly in his first year, and that's kind of the reason why they fucking did it, because they're idiots.
Right.
But and LaShawn McCoy had an amazing year. I don't know. There must have been some personal issues going on between those two. But yeah, so Chip Kelly's gone. Doug Patterson is in. 2 other notable things I've got. They re-signed Fletcher Cox on the defense. Great player. Good for their defense. Defense was decent last year. The problem was their offense was shaky, so it made it harder on their defense. But the defense should definitely improve, I'd say, this year. And they also signed Ruben Randall. You probably know that name from the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. Pretty much an ass bag for the most part. But, guy who's been in the league for 4 or 5 years now. And he could contribute. I don't see why not. But
right.
We'll see. Getting into their schedule. Not the worst schedule in the world, I'd say. Notable games. They play Pittsburgh in Week 3. They've got a bye week in Week 4. They play the Seahawks, Green Bay, and then Cincy in Weeks 11, 12, and 13. And then their fantasy playoffs look fairly juicy, I'd say. Week 14, they got the Redskins. Week 15, at Baltimore. And Week 16 versus the New York Giants. So, definitely doable. Nothing
that really scares you out of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Baltimore maybe, but who knows?
Yeah.
Getting into the fantasy impact players, they've got a few. Nobody that's really high on the on your draft boards. They don't have guys going until probably about the 5th round. You see the first Eagle go off the board,
which is weird because in the past the Eagles have had studs left and right that were going, 2014, LaShawn McCoy, number 1 guy.
Yeah. Jordan Matthews went 3rd round last year.
Yeah, exactly. And, so it's kind of weird because that was the high-flying offense, the offense everybody wanted a piece of.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Foles had that insane season. I remember old Jeef drafted him in the 4th round in 2014.
Regretting that. Speaking of which, he got released today by the Rams.
He did, yeah, exactly. Who knows where old Foles will end up.
Yeah, exactly. But the first guy I've got on the actual fantasy players that matter is I got Sam Bradford. 2015 was a bit of a disappointment. I think, when we're getting close to the drafts, his ADP started really to climb. People were like, ooh, maybe, the Heisman Trophy winner of old. Unfortunately, he only had about 3,700 yards, 19 TDs, and 14 interceptions. So not a ton of fantasy points.
Right.
Really kind of sucked.
He did kind of suck. Yeah, I think he went in our draft like 8th or 9th round, and just too high, really. I mean, the hype got up there.
Definitely.
So, I mean, that's a crazy thing. I cannot believe he got the contract he got, $12 million. It's insane for, the most mediocre quarterback, NFL quarterback anyway, you could possibly ask for.
Yeah, but, I mean, for a long time, people thought he was going to be a great guy just because of his size and his ball, just the way he can throw the ball, but... Yeah, I don't know. It's just never quite come together for him on the field, I'd say.
So maybe you draft Sam Bradford if you got a really good... I'd say if you got a really good quarterback, you got the Luck, the Cam Newton, you draft him in the 14th round as their backup.
If you really want to do that. There might even be some other guys you can test the waters with instead that might be better. But yeah, I mean, that's about where he's going. He's not really a guy you're thinking about too much in your fantasy drafts. So let's talk about one of these guys we are thinking about. And really, there's only 2 of really notable that are notable. And that's Jordan Matthews. He's 24. 2015, like we said, he was a bit of a disappointment. He came on strong towards the end. He actually had 85 catches and 1,000 yards last year.
I didn't realize he had that.
Yeah, 85 catches. I know, it seems strange.
He was getting dropped like a hot potato. Towards the beginning of the season.
Oh yeah, no, he was very disappointing in the beginning. Only 8 TDs. This is going to be the guy's 3rd year, so I mean, he was a guy who was drafted early, like when the Eagles actually drafted him. I think he's gonna get better. I mean, I think he is a smart receiver. The only problem is Sam Bradford and the offense in general. Can he really produce what he's capable of? But I think he's gonna improve again. I think he's gonna do about 90 catches, probably get a few hundred more yards, maybe 1,200, and maybe get to that 10 TD area. Maybe be a low end wide receiver one, something like that.
Has the potential of that upside anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And so hopefully it's going to get better in Philly. Another guy we got here, we got Ryan Matthews, 28 years old, also was traded to them last season. In 2015, remember, he was playing behind DeMarco Murray, so he only had 100 attempts, but he had almost 600 yards, so he had like a 5-yard per carry average, which is pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it is.
And he also got 6 TDs, and he caught another TD too. So, I mean, everybody's always known this kid could play really well if he can stay on the field.
Absolutely. I mean, there were, I think, 3 years ago, he was going in the top 20.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he might have even been a first rounder.
And yeah,
in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
I'm really high on him this year. I'm probably more high on him than I probably should be. I've got him ranked right around the Matt Forte, Deion Lewis type area.
I got you.
And I would feel good taking him in the 5th round, 6th round even. And people are saying that's too high. I don't think so. I just don't see who else is making carries.
Yeah, I mean, Sproles.
Yeah, Sproles is going to be there, but Sproles is Sproles.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have his role. He's probably going to be the pass catcher, the long third downs, and the plays where you got to make something special happen in the passing game. But I mean, as far as just getting the regular work, I don't see who else it's going to be.
I think the only reason why he is as low as he is in drafts is because everybody knows of how injury prone he's always been.
And how fumble-rooski he's been.
Yeah, that too. That doesn't help. But I mean, you're right. If the guy stays healthy, he could be in for a great fantasy workload. But
the thing that entices me about Matthews more than anything is his upside, I guess. The upside is there for him to be a top 10 back this year. It really is.
Absolutely.
And he's not going anywhere close to top 10 back potential.
Yeah.
I mean, usually you can get him in the 6th round, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
And so I say, hey, take him in the late 5th, take him in the early 6th, absolutely. Make your money. But, all right, who else? Who else are we looking at?
Yeah, last guy I've got that's really notable, Zach Ertz. Coming in his 4th year, 25-year-old guy, big-ass fucking tight end. Everybody's wanting to see this guy produce. Last year, another guy that kind of surprised me, he had 75 catches last year.
Yeah.
75 catches, 850 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's what sucks.
Including one in the fantasy football playoffs.
Did he?
Which Ian picked him up. The guy who played in the fantasy football playoffs. He had his best game in the fantasy football Super Bowl against me.
It's funny. He had I picked him up in the championship 2 years prior, and he's caught like 14 balls like retarded.
I like him too. I think he's a sneaky. I don't even know if sneaky is the right word. The problem with Zach Ertz is we've talked about him for the last 3 years about him being the sneaky tight end who makes that ascension. Is this year though? Is this year that he makes the ascension?
It could. I will say Bradford definitely did lean on him towards the end of the season, so I kind of hope that trend continues to a degree. I mean, I don't see any reason why he doesn't get 70 catches again. It comes down to those red zone targets. He's got to get that.
He doesn't really get those red zone targets. He's more of the. He's not quite the beastly tight end. He is really like the quintessential should be a wide receiver type tight end. He doesn't block well. He runs great routes. He's fast, but he doesn't have the size of other tight ends. So I like him. I do. I think he'll be a top 5 guy this year. But he could fall right back into the old number 12 spot like he's been doing for the last 3 years.
He could easily do that. That's for sure. Just a couple of notables real quick. Darren Sproles, 33 years old. Still keeps fucking amazing people.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to get you a shitload of fantasy points, but if Matthews goes down, better have him.
To advocate for the devil himself, Darren Sproles, he was a top 30 back in a half PPR format last year, and a top 25 back in a PPR format. So just keep that in mind, and he has been for the last 15 years. But he has been for the last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, so just keep it in mind. I've got him in my top 100. I've got him going around Niles Davis, Darren McFadden territory, Mohamed Sanu type area. And if he does what he's done in years past, he probably should go in the 8th. But No one's going to take him there. So I think he's a decent play. Almost any time you draft him, what I've always noticed, though, is I drafted him the last 2 years, I always drop him because he has shitty games, and I just don't want him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And that's how he's going to be. He's going to plug and play guy.
Yeah.
Matthews goes down. You want him on your team then for sure.
Oh, yeah.
A couple other guys real quick. Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver. A lot of people said he was going to do real good last year. Ended up sucking ass. I mean, he's second year. He should improve. You know, depending on whether or not the offense actually improves together in general, will probably impact how he does. But notable, he is not going to be charged for raping the stripper. The
I did
DA
not realize
said
he was even accused of such.
Oh, you didn't?
Egregious
Yeah.
activity.
About a month and a half ago, he banged a stripper at a strip club, and she said he raped him.
And there's always the thing with that is like, as dirty and nasty as I know some of these NFL football players are, there's always people coming after their money. So I never know what to make of situations like that. It's like, do you believe the guy who just like you don't want to believe him, but then again he's making $3 million a year or $4 million a year? Of course, people are going to come after him. So I don't know. Fuck that. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Zeke Elliott's going through it right now.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully by next week we'll know for sure that's horseshit.
When I'm in need.
Exactly. Fucking gold digger. And one last guy, sneaky sleeper guy, just so you hear his name because he's a rook. Wendell Smallwood. If Matthews goes down, keep your eyes on this guy too. He's they got him in the 5th round, but he was the Big 12 leading rusher last year. He's got real good hands, good route runner, and good blocker. There's a chance he could stay on the field a lot.
Well, 5'6", 185 Darren Sproles is not going to be the first down back.
That's true.
And
that's
why,
true.
you should keep an eye on that guy because you're right. I don't really believe in handcuffing of running back you draft in the 6th round. But, you pick him up just like that because his name's not that well known, and you could probably get him off the waiver wire not even putting in a bid. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll move into the Cowboys. Cowboys! They're probably the most enticing fantasy football team in this division. We got the 5th easiest schedule in the NFL.
They do.
Yeah, Week 7 bye in the fantasy football playoffs. Another somewhat tasty matchups. New York Giants for the first week. Tampa Bay Bucks for the second week, and then in your Super Bowl playoff, Detroit. So a little bit of a tougher matchup.
Yeah.
So let's get into their draft. They drafted some guy in the 1st round. I can't really... Who's that guy? Oh, yeah, it was Zeke Elliott. The number 1 pick, or not number 1 pick, but...
First running back.
First running back taken off the board out of Ohio State, and we'll get more into that. There'll be plenty of Zeke discussion here to come. In the 4th round, they picked Dak Prescott, quarterback, and then pretty much for the rest of it, they went pretty defensively heavy, except for some tight ends, some running back flyers later on.
Yeah.
So, probably what they needed to do. They needed a running back. They needed that marquee name, and I think they did a good job. If I was them, I would have done the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I would have done. It was a fan. Not only was it a fan pick and a Jerry Jones pick, it was the right pick, I think, at the end of the day.
I mean, I really, really hope so. Yeah. I hope we have Emmett Jr. on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I don't think he's quite the innate talent that Todd Gurley is, but I think he's right up there with him. Yeah. He's right up there with him. He may not be an Adrian Peterson. He may just be a Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yeah.
And, I mean, at the end of the day, with that O-line, which we'll get into later on again, it may not matter if he's Maurice Jones-Drew, but he's just, Danny Woodhead.
Yeah,
he may just have the most incredible season.
Exactly, because that's a fucking wall.
Right, exactly. So the biggest offseason, I searched far and wide for offseason signings, and maybe you can fill me in. Maybe I missed something. Alfred Morris.
A couple defensive guys, but nobody to really, write home about.
It was really their draft where they made the noise.
Yeah.
So let's talk about their O-line, because you can't talk about the Dallas Cowboys without talking about their far and away the best, statistically speaking, eye test speaking, all the categories, number one in both pass and run blocking, number 1 in penalties. They're the best O-line.
They're fucking ungodly. And they have, 3 guys that don't even play that are still fucking great.
They're deep as shit.
Yeah.
You could fucking dig to China and you could find a fucking a Cowboy O-lineman there ready to step into that position and slay.
Yeah, it's getting so bad that the Cowboys are now thinking about trying to trade LaFell Collins or whatever that first round lineman they got last year. Or no, he should have been a first rounder. Just because they need guys on defense. So they're like, fuck it, we'll get rid of some of these O-linemen.
Right, they don't need all the O-linemen. I mean, but that was the thing. I was reading Pro Football Focus, and they said the Dallas Cowboys are the best offensive line, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
Period. They're just the best. They make any running back playable. DeMarco Murray had his incredible season. That was when the O-line hadn't even gotten to its zenith.
Yeah.
And then you saw it last year. Darren McFadden ended up being a top 10 running back. He did nothing for the rest of his career, other than one good year in Oakland.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, their O-line it makes their team, and it's amazing last year that they really weren't as competitive just because their backup quarterbacks ended up
god awful
sucking dick. Brandon Weeden,
Matt Castle,
just
Matt
awful.
Moore.
And that was my biggest hit on the Cowboys this year. Is that right now their backups are Kellen Moore, a pretty untested vet. I think he'll be better than Brandon Weeden if he ends up getting the start.
Yeah, I mean he played the last couple games at the end of the season, and it wasn't anything great, but it was better than what Weeden and Castle did earlier. So
yeah, and I don't know, it's just very concerning to me because here's how I honestly feel. I think that Romo will probably miss 25% of the season at least. I think so. I just don't trust his shoulders.
I mean, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But.
I mean, I'm just looking at last year now. Granted, maybe I'm looking at last year too much and not considering the year before when he played 14 games, the year before that when he played 15, and the year before that when he played all 16 games. So he was obviously playing the bulk of the season for the last 3 years. The guy's only 36 years old. I'm just very worried. I'm very worried about Romo and what that means for Des Bryant and what that means for other players on the team.
He's definitely a linchpin for that offense. If he goes down, well, fucking fire sale. I mean, these players become worth not much.
Right.
Maybe Zeke retains some value just because. I mean, Zeke is probably the safest player on the team, really.
Right. No, I think Zeke is the safest because I look at Zeke one of two ways. Either Romo stays head man in charge and goes throughout the season, and Zeke's yards per carry average is insane because the passing lanes are open, or Romo goes down and Zeke's carries go up because they have to rely on him. So he still gets the volume, even though he's not getting the yards per carry. But I still think he's either way. Zeke, I think, is Romo proof. Everybody else is Romo dependent.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially Des Bryant.
Right. All right. So yeah, like I said, the backup quarterback situation to me is the biggest weakness of the Cowboys, both in terms of actual NFL potential and fantasy potential.
I agree. Yeah, most definitely.
So because if you got Kellen Moore, Dak Prescott thrown, it's not going to be the same guy that Romo is.
Definitely.
And that's especially true for Darren McFadden, or not Darren McFadden, excuse me, for Des Bryant.
Yeah.
All right, so I do want to touch on their running back depth chart right now because there was a little bit of confusion. Right now, it's looking like Zeke, McFadden, and then Morris.
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna draft a handcuff, you're probably gonna draft McFadden.
Probably, yeah.
But I mean, at that point,
it looks like his elbow is already pretty good to go. Like I think he's going to be playing in the next week
I
or two.
agree. I mean, but at that point, it's. If Zeke goes down, it's you should be paying attention if you're a Zeke owner to make sure that you have the proper handcuff.
That's true. I wonder where do you think Darren will end up going, assuming everything continues as it is? 9th,
10th, 11th round, somewhere around there. I mean, I would assume that you're going to draft him if you're a Zeke owner, and that you probably wouldn't have much interest in him. Opposite of that.
Yeah. That's true. I think most people think that he's gonna suck up most of the points. So yeah, no, I'd agree with you. But I don't know. He could go a little bit earlier. I could see him sneaking up just a hair.
Maybe to the 8th, or even 7th. I don't know. 7th, maybe
if you're a Zeke owner, you'll probably take him earlier than you would.
I would say if you're a Zeke owner, play it safe. Take him in the 9th. Who else are you gonna fucking draft in the 9th unless you're looking for a tight end or a backup quarterback?
That's true.
I mean, have some insurance. And if you got Zeke in the 1st, taking an insurance player in the 9th is not a bad idea. But keep an eye on the preseason, because maybe Morris takes over that role. I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know that the Cowboys have that much loyalty to McFadden.
Yeah, I mean, he's only been there for 1 year, so who knows, really.
All right, we'll get into their notables, and which we've already actually talked a good bit about.
Yeah. Tony
Romo, 36 years old, skirting that top 10 border kind of. I think, look, last year I drafted him in the 5th. I thought it was going to be the year of the remote. And he went down, and he had a great first game. And I was convinced, this is it. We might as well drop Russell Wilson, trade him away. But, I mean, the injury really is a big concern with this guy. I mean, otherwise, he is definitely a top 10 guy. He's definitely.
I'd say he is, yeah.
Like, I mean, he's always, to me, had the potential to bust into the top 5. He's never quite really had the breakout season that I think he's capable of, and I think the Cowboys fans want him to have. But
yeah,
I mean, look, in 2014, he passed 3,700 yards, added 34 touchdowns. It was big numbers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the touchdowns are certainly there, and that's what he does well. Is like they'll give it to him in the red zone to pass it.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And maybe a little bit less with Zeke now, but especially when those 10-yard type situations, they're more than willing to let him throw it to Dez Bryant.
Oh, absolutely. And they did it a ton in 2014.
Yeah, for sure. Again, my concern with him is I'm projecting him to miss at least 25% of the season on an aggregate projection.
Yeah.
Maybe he misses 75%. Maybe he only misses 2 games. But
yeah.
I think like that 25%, you got to consider that in your projections.
You do that. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. So I mean, I can't fault you for that. Just gotta pray Romo plays all 16.
Right. Exactly. And if he does, then this offense is you want every player on this offense.
Yeah.
You want Terrence Williams. You want the kicker.
That's true. Dan Bailey. Yeah. Hell yeah.
All right, and moving on to Dez Bryant, and I feel like this guy is the most Tony Romo dependent player on the team as far as the average draft value is considered. Because I think if Tony Romo doesn't play and you just know he's not the quarterback, Dez Bryant goes in the 4th. If Tony Romo plays, he's a first rounder. Mm-hmm. And so last year he played 9 games without Tony Romo, caught 31 passes for 400 yards. 3 touchdowns.
It was rough.
It was rough. It was really rough. So, I mean, I think he's going to do great this year. I really do. I think maybe, we're putting too much stock into the Tony Romo thing. Even with Kellen Moore, I think he has a better year statistically than that. So,
yeah, I'd
say draft him with confidence in the early 2nd round. That's how I feel about him. With confidence in the early 2nd round, be wary in the late 1st when you can get maybe AP. When you can get Zeke, I'd take Zeke over Dez Bryant.
I would too, yeah. But yeah, no, I like Dez a lot. He's definitely the thing you love about Dez, or at least I do, is he's just a red zone monster.
He is, yeah.
So I mean, that's what you really got to hope for.
And that's why Tony Romo loves him in the red zone. And hopefully Kellen Moore takes a note. And if Tony Romo goes down, bam, he does the same thing. Then we got old Zeke. Got to talk about Zeke. We already have a little bit.
Zeke.
It's all about the potential for Zeke because we haven't seen shit yet,
mm-hmm.
as AJ so eloquently pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see him not getting the carries. I don't see him not getting the volume. And like we talked about already, whether Romo goes down or Romo stays up, it kind of plays well both ways for him.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. He seems like a guy who's injury-proof with regard to Romo. So
right. Exactly. And so we talked about, do we handcuff Zeke with Morris or McFadden? Right now it's McFadden.
Yeah.
Right now you handcuff him with McFadden. Matt Jones took over the job from Morris because Morris looked like shit. So I think you stick with McFadden there. As far as mentionables, Terrence Williams, kind of a flex play. Maybe draft him 14th, 15th round. He's not going in most mock drafts that I've seen. And then kicker Dan Bailey. If Romo's healthy, he's a Romo-dependent guy, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But keep an eye on it. Again, I'm really boiling all this down to Romo-dependent Cowboys. But maybe this is the year where they buck that trend. Or just, it's not a trend at all because it was just 1 year.
Yeah, I was going to say, it only happened 1 year.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe we're just all overthinking this. But it does seem the fantasy community definitely thinks that this is a Romo-dependent team, I would say. And, we've kind of bought into that to a degree.
But you never know. I mean, this thing, football's unpredictable, so I wouldn't say, let Dez Bryant slip past you at number 15 because you're worried about Romo going down,
Yeah.
Of course you draft him.
Mm-hmm.
You don't worry about, not picking up Dan Bailey with your last pick because you're like, you'd rather take some shittier offense. No, you draft him. You draft him and you hope things work out, but just be aware of it. Make your insurance plans.
Don't forget about what happened in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess get into the Giants now.
Yeah, let's do it. The old Giants.
Okay, the old Giants. As far as their draft went, there's really only one guy I really want to talk about, but we got cornerback Eli Apple. It's who they took in the first round. They might have reached a little bit on that pick, but helps their defense. They lost some cornerbacks, so that definitely is going to help. But it's the number 2 pick, second round, Sterling Shepard, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. That's the guy that we're all really interested in. Other than that, the only other guy of note, I would say, was Paul Perkins, running back. They took in the 5th round. Still a lot of questions as far as the Giants go with regard to running back. So,
yeah, with Sterling Shepard, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I haven't put much research into the guy. What is so appealing about this guy? Is it just that there's, other than ODB, there's really not much else there at wide receiver at this point?
Well, from what I've heard, is he seems like a pretty smart kid, a pretty disciplined kid as far as a football player goes. He's a Randall Cobb style player. He's going to be a slot guy, and he was just a hard-nosed, badass fucking wide receiver.
So maybe he can be the Randall Cobb to Jordy Nelson and, the Sterling Shepard to ODB there.
Exactly. With Eli Manning passing the ball, it could get fucking juicy.
Yeah, it could.
But yeah, let's get into the offseason. As you probably or should know, Tom Coughlin left, and Ben McAdoo, former offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers, some of those epic seasons, is now the head coach. Bodes well for Eli. They re-signed old firework hand Jason Pierre-Paul for another year.
Thank goodness he's not a wide receiver.
Yeah. And they picked up a lot of guys in free agency for their defense. So their defense should definitely improve. Other than that, we got the schedule. Week 1, they're playing at the Cowboys. Week 5 at Green Bay. They got their bye week in Week 8. And they got Cincy in Week 10, Pitt in Week 13. The fantasy playoffs look pretty juicy, I'd say. They played Dallas in Week 14, whose defense is not looking good. Detroit in Week 15 and Philly in Week 16. So they've got a relatively easy schedule. They play a couple difficult teams, but for the most part, it's a pretty doable schedule. So, draft your Giants. They should put up lots of fantasy points.
And I think Steven brought this up in one of our earlier podcasts. Sometimes Eli Manning, he bucks all trends and does stellar against great defenses. And sometimes he shits the bed against terrible defenses.
It is true.
So it's old Eli, unpredictable mouth breather Manning. You got to kind of just,
Yeah. I mean, the Giants last year, I think they went 6-10, and they lost 8 of 10 games that were decided by a touchdown or less.
Right.
So, I mean, they just fuck up a lot. They're just fuck-ups, really. I mean, they've got some great talent, but they're fuck-ups. Eli Manning is a mouth-breathing fuck-up. But maybe with Sterling Shepard, that'll change. But, yeah, let's get into the fantasy impact guys. I really have got three guys of note. Eli Manning, of course, turned 35 this year. Last year had about 4,500 yards, 35 TDs, 14 interceptions. Great numbers, really. He was frustrating. He had some big games and some shitty games, but that's really what you expect with Eli. You can't play him every single week. 2016, I'd say expect more of the same. You might see him get closer to 5,000 yards. Excuse me, or even a little bit closer to 40 TDs, depending on how Sterling Shepard pans out, because we know this next guy, ODB, is going to fucking rip it off. I mean, the kid has played 2 seasons, and I think he had 1,300 yards, 90 catches in the first one.
Right.
Last year, 96 catches, almost 1,500 yards, 13 TDs.
Sky's the limit, really.
Yeah, I mean, this kid's proven that he's just a fucking animal out there. I don't know how. He's only 5'11", 190 pounds. I mean, the guy's...
It kind of reminds me
of
Antonio Brown in a lot of ways. Because Antonio Brown's same type. Not the biggest guy, but is just so shifty. Mm-hmm. Can create that separation. And just fills me with excitement and glee. And I really, really want him on my team one year. Unfortunately, this year I'm not going to get him. But, I mean, I would... He's the only guy that I think this year I would consider picking above AB.
Well, yeah. And we've talked about this, and kind of the reason why that is because Eli Manning almost never gets hurt. So
right.
We saw what happened with AB's numbers when Roethlisberger went down last season. They turned right back to where they were when he came back. But still, I mean, fuck, if Roethlisberger goes down again, can you really suffer that? why not pick up ODB and have him just get you 20 points every fucking game? You might miss out on some fucking 38-point games or some shit.
I mean, that's the thing, though, is like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like with Odell Beckham, like, this might be his breakout year where he does do the shit that you expect of AB, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to ever say some dude's going to break records, but I kind of look at ODB the way I look at Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck. Like, you draft them early because they got the potential to be a record breaker. And when you got a record breaker, your team is set up for success.
That's true, because when you hit that fucking lottery ticket, it explodes and it's amazing.
Right, exactly.
The fantasy
and
joy.
when your lottery ticket's ODB, who you're like, your floor is 1,300 yards and 10 TDs.
Yeah.
Your ceiling is 2,000 yards and 17 TDs.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say AB and Julio probably have slightly higher ceilings just because I think they can get more yardage. But, I mean, yeah, ODB, or Odell, he's fucking
probably
retarded.
Good for more catches.
Yeah, probably good for more catches. And I'd say he might even have a safer floor than the two of them, because of the injury proneness and Roethlisberger shit. So, but yeah, so we got Odell Beckham, expect much of the same, draft with plenty of confidence. Another guy we got Rashad Jennings, 31, running back. Like I said, there's not much, we just don't know a lot about the running backs in New York. Last year we were told Andre Williams was going to step up and become that lead back. That, of course, never happened. Rashad Jennings, towards the end of the year, played pretty well, but we also got Shane Vereen there, and they also drafted this Paul Perkins kid. So there's just a lot there.
Tough. I mean, that hasn't been a good backfield almost since like 2011.
I think Bradshaw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that was the last time like it was a playable backfield. Just for whatever reason, they are all about the RBBC.
Yeah, exactly. Just running back by committee. So I wouldn't expect a lot out of Jennings. I'd expect you to see similar numbers. There's a chance if some of those guys, if he got the lead role, he might be able to get 250 carries, somewhere around 1,000 yards. But it's still not super likely. He's gonna be a plug and play guy. There might be good weeks to play him, and we'll see. Nothing to write home about. But that guy we talked about earlier, Sterling Shepard, he's probably a guy I would take over Rashad Jennings in the draft.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
There's just so much potential upside to him. He's kind of like Zeke in a way. He's from what I've heard in the practices, he's been doing fucking great. And with Beckham there, he's going to get nothing but single coverage. So
right, exactly.
And he's going to be playing the slot. Eli Manning, Ben McAdoo's offense. This guy, don't be surprised if this guy ends up going like in the 6th round when you actually draft. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then maybe rightfully so. Maybe he becomes like a high-end wide receiver 3 with like wide receiver 2 upside. That sort of Randall Cobb syndrome that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. It's possible for him because, is Victor Cruz even on the goddamn team anymore?
Yeah, there's Victor Cruz. He is on the team. He's supposed to be running, but I think the injury is still holding him up. It's I don't know. I think that guy's days are over personally, but
he was never an exceptional talent. He was kind of like a product of his circumstances. There really wasn't anybody else there.
That's
he
true.
Just became like the versatile guy who you could use in any situation because he had decent separation and good speed out of the slot. But ODB became the deep threat.
Oh yeah,
and he just after ODB's ascendance, Victor Cruz days. You're right, just became numbered.
Yeah, the injury he had too. I wouldn't expect much out of Victor Cruz, so I'm not seeing a lot. One other guy I might want to mention, we got Larry Donnell, that tight end. Of course, he got fucked up real bad at the end of the season. They re-signed him to another year, but he had a pretty horrific injury, and a lot of people are saying Will Tye, another tight end, is actually a guy that might do better than Donnell this next year. So, remember those names. They might become important towards in the middle of the season or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the Giants.
All right. We move straight into the Redskins after old mouth breather led Eli Manning Giants. Well, the one thing I do want to ask you, where do you take Eli Manning? 10th round?
I think he's worth taking higher than that. Probably, honestly, 7th, 8th round.
Really?
But because of who Eli Manning is, you're probably right. He'll probably go in the 10th, 9th, 10th round. But I think he's a guy. I'd probably take him over Romo personally.
I would too. And this is the year that I think if you take a risk on Eli, it's this year. Maybe he makes the ascendance that we've always known he was capable of making, but he just never has. But I think the tools are in place this year. Like you said, Ben McAdoo,
absolutely,
with those weapons he has around him. Yeah, I'm high on Eli this year.
And the fact that he never gets hurt.
I like the idea of pairing him with Tom Brady personally.
Oh yeah, that'd be very.
I like
nice.
the idea of pairing with like a 7th, 8th round Tom Brady, Eli Manning pick.
Back-to-back quarterbacks. Yeah.
I think that's a solid strategy. I think you get top 5 quarterback potential out of that.
If you can play it right, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to the Redskins, moving on to their schedule. 15th easiest schedule, Week 9 bye. Their fantasy playoffs, they got Philadelphia, Carolina, tough in your semis, and then Chicago for your Super Bowl. So, I'm pretty high on Chicago's defense this year, so I think that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Pretty tough Super Bowl or playoff schedule. So, draft, the big move they did was Josh Doctson, wide receiver out of TCU. This guy has fucking every measurable that you like. He is a great route runner. He has an exceptional mental attitude. Extremely good hands is probably his best asset. And then the speed and separation. The concern in, he's small, and right now he's a bad blocker. Just not good at blocking.
Okay.
So he kind of reminds me of A.J. Green in a lot of ways. Kind of smaller frame, decent speed and separation, great hands. So kind of that same A.J. Green type guy. I say keep an eye on this guy. Keep an eye on him. Maybe even consider drafting him late as you pretty much want him.
Keeper bait?
Exactly. Keeper bait, stash him for 4 weeks. See what he does, because the wide receiver core in Washington is aging a bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
2 29-year-old wide receivers in Pierre Garçon and in Deshaun Jackson.
Yep.
That are certainly not over the hump. Or they're certainly not over the hump, but they're probably at the peak and could easily make that slip. So just keep an eye on them for sure.
Oh yeah.
The rest of the draft was pretty much defensive heavy. They took a quarterback in the 6th, and in the 7th round they took running back Keith Marshall out of my alma mater, UGA. We'll see how he does. I don't think that guy's quite NFL talent, but
yeah, I've heard it's probably they're going to give Matt Jones at least the first part of the season to prove that he can.
Keith Marshall right now, he's at best right now running back 3 on the team.
Yeah,
not draftable, but just something to keep an eye on. And again, I don't think he quite has the NFL talent, but hopefully he makes a living for himself. As a backup.
For sure.
In the offseason, big moves here. They locked in Kirk Cousins for a big deal. I think too big.
Yeah.
Because I kind of look at Kirk Cousins as like a Nick Foles 2013 type guy.
I was going to ask you that. Is Nick Foles, or is Kirk Cousins this year's Nick Foles, of 2 years ago?
I mean, there's all the signs pointing that way. NFC East, scrawny white guy, great, great end of the season, but we'll see. Other than that, Josh Norman, they're really their biggest pickup at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Their biggest pickup. Josh Norman, insane cornerback, really adds some depth to the secondary there in Washington. Makes them a considerable play.
Oh yeah, well, what the funny thing is about Josh Norman is, of course, we remember the UFC match between him and Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
But so obviously he's going to get to play him twice now. But also another person who Josh Norman loves to get in fights with is Des Bryant. He gets to play him twice too. So basically, a quarter of his games are going to be UFC matches now.
It'll be interesting. I am kind of suspecting a suspension there.
Yeah, it could easily happen.
Because as I watched that game, I was like, I'm pretty sure Norman's the aggressor here. That game against ODB. It was maybe it was mutual.
I actually I got to see the highlights. I didn't get to actually watch the game because I was driving back from fucking Florida at the time. I just had to listen to it on the radio and watch my team die. But yeah, so I didn't get to see it. But I'm not quite sure, but maybe.
Yeah, and they lost RG3. That was, lost RG3,
Yeah.
got that cap space available. That's how they were able to give Cousins what I think was an outrageous sort of deal there.
It wouldn't be the first time the Redskins made a stupid fucking move like that.
It would not. No, you were correct on that. All right, let's talk about the O-line. It's a better than average unit. They got some studs, though they didn't make any offseason moves to improve it.
They didn't?
No, just developing their existing talent, which they have. They have some existing talent. So I don't think it's necessarily a terrible move. I'm personally of the opinion that you always make moves to improve your offensive line. That's just my opinion. It's a large unit. Like with quarterback, you can ignore it like the Patriots did for 15 years and be fine. Yeah. But if your offensive line has guys coming in and out, you probably need to make a move every year to keep that thing in check. But they have the talent right now. And again, I think they'll be a top 10 O-line. Trent Williams leads the group.
I was going to say, isn't his nickname Silverback?
Yeah. He's a beast. He didn't actually have that good of a season, but even still, they re-signed him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a pretty fucking good. He plays left tackle or left guard or whatever. Yeah. He plays the blind side. That guy. I mean, he's been pretty good for a long time. Might have had a down year last year, but he's a fucking ruthless dude.
He is. He's the core of that offensive line. They'll be fine. I mean, again, the top 10 unit, protecting Kirk Cousins there. So I think in general, when you look at the Washington Redskins, you have to maybe not assume some of the players, namely Kirk Cousins, do as well as they did last year, but you're pretty comfortable drafting them where they're going. I think most of them are being drafted where they should go. Mm-hmm. So starting with Kirk Cousins, last year had some pretty good numbers, 4,200 yards, 29 TDs, added 48 on the ground. This is an insane stat to me. I just don't understand this stat. 5 rushing touchdowns.
It must have just been some scrambling, just ridiculousness, and just...
It was. He's good. He is, frankly, good at running in the red zone.
He's still a young guy, so...
And I think, for whatever reason, even after 4 touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, teams just really weren't expecting it.
Yeah, makes sense.
And he was able to put up that number, which is really awesome. So great season last year, a top 10 QB last year. He had some monster games at the end of the season, though, and that's always concerned me when you have monster games at the end of the season, again, against me in the fantasy football finals. I was at that game.
You literally witnessed it.
I witnessed Zach Ertz have his best game and Kirk Cousins have his best game against me in the fantasy football finals. I was playing Deshaun Jackson. He had one of his worst games. And so, basically, the score came out at the end of the day, 65 points. The Ian Harris shitty cosmic freakout team against the Fighting Nuns, 4 points. And I was like, all right, I already lost.
Yeah, it's fucked at that point.
It was terrible. Anyway, I don't really know what to make of this guy. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 guy, but maybe he falls out because he's Nick Foles.
Yeah.
I really don't know. So I've got him projected for 3,700 yards and 30 TDs, passing TDs. I only expect 100 yards on the ground and only 2 rushing TDs. So an overall drop in TDs and drop in yards. I think regression is kind of going to be the name of his game.
I'd say so.
You know, draft him as a backup, for sure.
Yeah. With 2 older receivers, yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough for Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you're exactly right. He's put on some monster points at the end of the season, and everybody's high as fuck on him. I would draft with extreme caution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that the Washington Redskins front office fell into the same trap that a lot of these fantasy gurus are falling into. Is he the innate talent that these guys that are making the similar salaries are? I just don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't see it. Anyway, Deshaun Jackson, 29 years old. He played 9 games last year. Really didn't even have good stats for those 9 games. 528 for 4 touchdowns.
Hurt himself in the first fucking game.
Yeah, he did. It was pretty rough. Look, I think Cousins overall, Kirk Cousins under center is good for D-Jax. Still a great deep threat. Now, I want to bring up AJ's stupidity here because AJ keeps on saying Deshaun Jackson one of the top 3 deep threats in the NFL. No, he's not. No, he's not. There's Antonio Brown, there's ODB, there's Julio Jones, there's Jordy Nelson, there's Sammy Watkins. There's pretty much like 1,000 other guys that are better. Amari Cooper.
He's just one of the guys that's like exclusively somewhat successful at deep threat. He's not like Kenny Stills who like catches it like once every 10 times.
Right, exactly. He's a boomer bust guy. I've got him a decent projection, similar to his 2014 stats, 1,100 yards, 8 TDs, a wide receiver 3.
Definitely.
And if he does 1,108, he's almost wide receiver 2 territory.
Well, his little skinny bird legs also are so prone to fucking hamstring being fucking pulled.
And not only that, I mean, his hamstrings have been injured in the past. Why? Because he just jets down the field. Here's a little piece of advice for you, Deshaun Jackson. Stretch your fucking legs.
Yeah, really.
Keep them loose. Maybe you wouldn't get a hamstring pull every other game.
Fucking turd.
Anyway, I like Deshaun Jackson going in like the 8th round, 7th, 8th round.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, take him. He could end up being a wide receiver too if he has a good year, a great year. So yeah, I'd take him there, and I think he's a solid flex play if nothing else.
Yeah, I think that's about where he went last year.
Yeah, it is. It is. He's been going the same spot for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Where he needs to go because he has that injury proneness and he's a one-trick pony. He's a one-trick pony. He's the deep threat. Like AJ says, he's just not a great deep threat.
Yeah, just beat everybody in a race and pray you catch the ball.
Exactly. Okay, so here we go. Pierre Garçon or Dotson? Who do you draft as the... Not, you can't really call him a handcuff, but who do you draft as the flyer on that team?
I mean, I'd rather have Dotson just because of the potential. And Garçon, I mean, he's had some great years.
2013.
Yeah.
For the entire NFL.
Yeah. had the most receptions somehow with RG3. But man, I don't know. He's older. He's even injury prone too now.
He looks like he lost a step.
Yeah, I'd give it to Dotson. At least maybe he comes on strong towards the end of the season, and you might feel comfortable taking him as a keeper. Because I mean, he should be good in the next few years. So.
I agree. The way that the scouts have talked about Dotson, I think that he is a guy that I'm looking at. If I'm in the 14th round and I'm just like, well, who the fuck do I draft? And Dotson's still on the board, I'll absolutely take him. Mm-hmm. And let him sit on my bench for 4 or 5 weeks, see how he does. And, maybe he picks it up and is an awesome keeper. Because I think he has the potential to be the number one guy there. He has the potential. I'm not saying he is. I'm saying he has the potential to be the number one wide receiver there, especially since his wrist injury, which is what he went down with, was in November while he was still playing college ball.
Oh, yeah. I will say this. Guys, these are the kind of picks that could be wonderful for your fantasy franchise. Mm-hmm. Think about these guys in terms of the future because you can get them for so cheap.
If you're in a dynasty league, if you're in a keeper league, this is the type of guys you pick.
Just all the assholes that are out there who picked Todd Gurley so late last year and get to keep that motherfucker.
Just like Frank.
Yeah. No, I don't. Well, I do.
You're the asshole that didn't pick him.
Okay, yeah. I'm the asshole who did pick him in one league and the asshole who didn't pick him in the other league and picked Arian Foster instead. But, I mean, just think, if you can get this guy in the 9th, 10th, well, fuck, even later probably than that. But if you can get him way back there, and next year he's a 5th, 6th round pick, that's awesome. I mean, just fucking great, so...
And then the guy who's going the highest of all the Redskins in fantasy drafts, kind of like where the fuck did this guy come from? Jordan Reed, the tight end, 952 yards, 11 touchdowns. Same amount of touchdowns as Gronk.
Yeah.
I mean, a total mismatch. He's kind of a Jimmy Graham type tight end. He's got the size. He's basically a wide receiver in disguise, and he's got great chemistry with Kirk Cousins.
He does.
So a big question with him is health because he has been injured.
Horrifically. I think he's injured he's
a little bit of a porcelain Jimmy Graham, basically.
Yeah, really.
That's what mainly concerns me about him. And I think that just naturally, 11 TDs, there's this stat that's floated around a lot of the fantasy football gurus, and that's other than Gronk, every tight end that ever has double-digit touchdowns for the last 5 years has always regressed to 7 or less touchdowns.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting,
yeah. So they always get at least 4 or 3 less touchdowns. So I kind of think that that's what we're looking at with him. I kind of think he misses a few games. But that being said, I would probably take him in the 5th round, 6th round for sure.
The thing I love about Jordan Reed is there's going to be so many people that reach for that motherfucker and waste a draft pick. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be hurt for a good part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if he plays 16 games, I think you're looking at right around 1,000 yards and 7-8 touchdowns.
Yeah. Which
is great. Great numbers for a tight end. I've got him as my number 3 tight end, but you're right. He might get hurt and put up a 656 touchdown stat line, which puts him right there with Dwayne Allen and, whoever your else bumfuck tight end is.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you should take him where he is currently falling. As far as ADP is concerned.
Yeah, I think he's another guy that, he finished the season strong because Kirk Cousins finished the season strong, or vice versa. So, he
is a freak. He's an athletic freak.
He is a freak. He had some great games, and it wasn't just the end of the season. He had some fucking wonderful games.
And he's had some great games in years past.
Yeah, the year before he was good.
But the injury is really the concern. Same thing that worries you about Tyler Eifert is they're just so injury prone. And they're putting up these monster years, and if we know one thing about tight ends is that unless they put up a monster year and then another monster year, you kind of got to worry about them for that flash in the pan. There's the Jordan Camerons of the world.
Absolutely.
You could name a tight end a dime a dozen who had a great season and then fell off the radar.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that with Jordan Reed. It's a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Then Matt Jones. He's the number one guy there. All indications are that. I say draft this guy in the 6th or 7th round. Great upside, though, because You take him there.
A lot of upside.
Yeah, he might be a top 12 running back. For sure.
Could easily be. He could be a 3-down back. Fuck.
He could be. I mean, I guess like
probably not, but
who else is there? But I mean,
they got Thompson, but he's more of a he's a more of a 3rd-down back.
Thompson is or Thomas rather Pierre Thomas.
No. I think it's Thompson, Chris or something.
I thought
can't
they picked up Pierre Thomas from the Saints.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, Alfred Morris was always the guy there for so long. I'm not sure what to make of Matt Jones. Last year put up 490 yards on the ground for 3 touchdowns, 304 yards in the air, which is awesome, for 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
Is he that pass catching back that he was last year? I'm not sure. Especially difficult to project with what I think will be a pass-heavy offense.
I think it would be too. He was a bit of a fumbler, if I remember correctly, last year too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if he can get that shit squared away, there's a lot of potential. He had a few good games, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be. I mean, you get him for pretty cheap. Fuck, you get him in the 6th round, 7th round.
He's the number 1 running back.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
far as on the team is concerned.
So I mean, if it works out, it could be worth it. Otherwise, he just sucks ass like any other running back.
Yeah, and so that pretty much brings up all the fantasy-relevant guys. I like Washington as far as their average draft value is concerned, average draft position value. I think you can pick up some sneaky picks. I think that Djax has the potential to be a number 2, number 3 wide receiver.
Definitely.
Jordan Reed, that's the one guy I say pump the brakes, but Matt Jones is great as far as average draft value and possibly picking up a sleeper there.
For sure.
Well, that wraps up our NFC.
This is the NFC East.
I'm terrible with divisions.
NFC East. They do all sound very similar.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that wraps up this episode of the Pickle Barrel Fantasy Football Podcast. Like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, or subscribe to us on YouTube, and just generally leave some comments. And if any of you guys ever have any questions, we will address them directly in the show.
Absolutely. And I think what are we going to do the next podcast? We're going to do about top 40 receivers. We're just going to delve deep into that.
Yeah, we're going to delve very deep into the wide receiver position, what is generally considered the most important position of this upcoming draft. You need to know these guys. So tune in next time for the Pickle Barrel Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Frank.
See y'all later.
Pickle.